Hello BookTube, this is Kelly. Thank you so much for watching Books I'm Not Reading. I am continuing my quest to catch up on reading tags. So today I am going to be doing the I am the reader tag. I did a little research. This tag was it was started by Emma A. Books. And in her video, she states that the tag actually came from a publisher who's releasing look like either a YA or maybe science fiction and fantasy book called The Reader. And so they came up with this I am the reader tag. And then I was tagged by Brian at Bookish, who continues to believe in me and then tag me in things, even though it's taken me a while to get back. So thank you, Brian. All right. So question number 1, choose one word that describes being a reader. It's a really hard question. I'm going to go with curious. I think that's what prompts us to open up a book, is to see what is between the pages. And that applies, I think, to fiction and nonfiction. But what is the very first book you fell in love with? If you're new to my channel, I grew up in a house full of books. There was no real separation between books for children and books for adults. And also at that time, aside from, picture books and books for, maybe elementary school students, there was no such thing as YA fiction. Books for teenagers, they just didn't exist. So the first book that I fell in love with many books. I created my own audiobook of Dr. Seuss's One Fish, Two Fish, Red Fish, Blue Fish. I wish I had the tape. I could play it for you if I had something to play it on. Some of you probably don't even know what tapes are. But nonetheless, so I fell in love with books pretty early on, but I did want to share with you this one that I read in 6th or 7th grade. This is Mara, Daughter of the Nile by, Eloise Jarvis McGraw. And this was one of those books I'm pretty sure I got in a Scholastic book order. You remember the newsprint kind of catalog, and you check off the books that you wanted to get or whatever. But I had a teacher, we had our textbooks open, and I could not put this book down at the time. I think this is maybe the first book that's true of, I couldn't put the book down. So on top of our textbook, it was so obvious. I don't know why I thought I could get away with it, but on top of our textbook reading, I had this book, and I was reading it and not what was assigned. And my teacher came by and picked up this book and looked at it and put it back down and didn't say anything to me. She let me keep reading it, which was awesome. Of course, then I did have to go back and read the story in the textbook and take a quiz on it, which I don't think I did so well, but it was really cool to have a teacher who was like, well, you're so enthralled in this book, I might as well just let you stick with it. So anyway, hardcover or paperback? Definitely paperback. Question number 4, how has reading shaped your identity? Well, Jason might not have married me if I wasn't a reader. So that would probably be a big difference. I don't know, I think BookTube is the place where I talk about books by far and away the most. It's funny, even my own parents, they don't take my book recommendations, they take Jason's book recommendations, my husband's. And so yeah, it's a little bit strange, but I really, it's amazing to me. Once I left the bookstore and started working in other places, I was so surprised that nobody ever talked about books at all. So once I was no longer surrounded by them, didn't really talk about it, and I thought that was very strange. But reading definitely has shaped me, but I'm not sure if I'm wise enough to know in what ways. hopefully for good. All right. Question number 5. What book do you read when you need to be comforted? You guys already know what the answer is. So this edition, even though it's a hardcover, my grandmother got this for me, and it is one of my cherished possessions. I would not want another edition of Pride and Prejudice. It has to be this one. So, okay. Who taught you to be a reader, or did you do it all on your own? So again, as I said, I grew up in a house with loads of books, and they were everywhere. And there was no censorship, no, you can't read this. I remember reading Stephen King in middle school. Some of the things I read, I think maybe were a little bit too adult, but nonetheless. The other thing that you have to understand about the house I grew up in, if you did not entertain yourself, someone would put you to work. So you had to be really engrossed in a book, or at least pretending to be engrossed in a book, or doing something, you had to entertain yourself. That my parents weren't going to do that for me. And they love me. It's not a negative thing, but it was just, that was the house that I grew up in. And so, yeah, there were always tons of books around, and so there was always something to find and read. Let's see. Next question is, describe your dream reading lounge. I just dream of a place where all the books fit. So I don't want any stacks of books on top of things. I don't want to buy another giant bookcase. I just want the books that we own to fit, but that's not in my control. So, but that is my dream. I would feel so much more comfortable in this room, our personal library, if everything we owned fit. But it just doesn't, and it probably never will, but I keep hoping. All right. Question number 8. What book changed the way you act or see the world? This is going to be kind of a strange pick. Okay. So I'm going to go with The Pickwick Papers by Charles Dickens. Jason and I had a year with a few other people where we read Bleak House, The Pickwick Papers, and Little Dorrit, all spread out over the course of a year. And when I read Bleak House, it was mind-blowing. It's such a masterpiece. Pickwick is not a perfect novel, but I almost felt like reading it, and I've probably said this before, but I felt as though I was watching Charles Dickens figure out how to write a novel, and that his characters didn't need to tell other stories. Like, his characters, they could stand on their own. They were what people were reading the stories for. And so even though it's flawed, it still made me laugh out loud multiple times, and it also just moved me to tears. So, and I was not a Charles Dickens fan. Prior to that year of reading them, I had a really horrible college professor that I read Great Expectations in their class, and so I thought I didn't like Dickens, aside from maybe A Christmas Carol, but this year, the year that we read these books, and especially reading Pickwick, really changed my attitude about Dickens, but also just about books. That books have the power to make us laugh out loud, to make us cry, like to care so much about characters that you don't want to leave. You don't want it to end. You want it to keep going because you want to stay with them. Earlier this year, I read A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, and I was just so depressed when I was done with it because I just didn't want to leave that world. And so I don't know if this book changed the way I see the world, but it definitely changed the way I see books and see their power, which is why it makes me so sad that I know so many people who don't read at all. I keep having someone in my life ask me if I read, if I listen to podcasts. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong at all with podcasts, but every once in a while I want to say, I do this thing called reading. Have you heard of it? Do you know about it? So anyway, Pickwick was definitely a turning point for me, and I will love Charles Dickens forever. For that and Bleak House alone. Okay, so some people I'd like to tag, and this is a little bit unusual, but I would like to tag MH Books. I would like to tag Book Zealots. And then I'd like to tag 2 people who don't have their own channels, but I know could easily answer these questions in the comment section, so the rest of us could know a little bit more about you. And since you're not going to make videos, so I'd like to tag Joe Smith, and I would like to tag Lillian Nieswender. Lillian, I hope I said your last name properly. All right, thank you guys so much for watching. Remember to be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and I look forward to hearing your response in the comment section below. If you haven't done this tag and you want to, please feel free. Consider yourself tagged. All right, talk to you soon, BookTube. Take care.